So I'm just going to very quickly cover, I know we're a bit pressed for time and I'm sure some of you are going to rush back to your real lives. So I might go a bit fast at times. I mean, interrupt me if you want, or, you know, I can answer some questions afterwards. I don't mind being interrupted in the middle, so if you want to do ask questions. But I'll sort of cover just a bit of the background to planning, then how we integrate transportation planning within the planning system, give you some examples of some major hubs, talk at the area end very briefly about the sort of funding mechanisms that we use, and a slight speculation on what the transferability is, because obviously your regulatory regimes over here are very different from ours in the UK. The key concept when we first had the Mayor and the Greater London Authority established in 2000 was to have integrated transport and land use planning. It's absolutely fundamental to all our policy. So you have the overall London plan, which talks an awful lot about transport, and underneath that, or alongside it, you have the Mayor's transport strategy, and it talks about everything being integrated, about development and growth, delivering better transport, improving transport through development, all that sort of thing. There are tons of other cross-cutting policies, which if you go on the internet, just look, I think London, it will come up, the Mayor's office will come up, and you'll see all the other things like air quality, climate change adaptation, noise, anything you can think of almost, there's a policy for it. But they are all interrelated, so you never will find a policy that you achieve the targets of one by losing the benefits of other objectives, so everything is tied together. And the way that we look at the sort of growth is through opportunity area planning frameworks. So areas have been identified within the London plan that are targeted for growth, and we develop policy documents that set out the sort of vision for these areas. Basically high density developments, they're usually close to public transport, nearly all of them sit either on top of transport hubs, but occasionally there are some. One I'm working on in the Upper Lee Valley north of the Olympic Park has very little public transport, so there the key is to make sure that that gets integrated. And the planning frameworks are a sort of 20-year horizon. That just gives you an idea of the growth, two major growth corridors in London, and then you see the circles and the triangles. The triangles are the opportunity areas, and the circles are areas of intensification. It's a slightly lower growth. Typically, an opportunity area might have 5,000, 10,000 new homes. Probably an area for intensification would have less than 1,000. So that's the sort of key difference. These are some of the examples I'm going to cover. This is King's Cross. This is still not finished. So this I've been working on since I joined the Mayor's office in 2000, and it's still being finished. So two major rail stations. We refer to it as King's Cross, but it's actually King's Cross St Pancras, which are the two stations slightly radiating apart. There was a long history to why this place needed to fix itself, and the first and tragic reason was that there was a catastrophic fire in 1987 that killed 31 people. And the recommendation following that fire was that London Underground had to rebuild its central concourse and facilities. So there was a long, long list of what TFL had to do. I think the immediate things that were done were taking out wooden escalators, which were incredibly old, but many of the other things had never been touched. Eurotunnel opened in 1994. There was a treaty between Britain and France that both countries would deliver high-speed rail from their capital cities of Paris and London to the Channel Tunnel. Paris had their high-speed in place, France had their high-speed in place a good year or two before we opened. But London somehow never got round to it. Margaret Thatcher couldn't figure out how it was going to be funded, so it wasn't delivered. So the Channel Tunnel opened, and you come from high-speed from Paris in, you know, an hour and a half, and you'd get to Channel Tunnel, take another hour and a half to get to London. So that was a reason, was that that high-speed link had to be delivered, and it was decided that it should actually come in to King's Cross. There was a need for an international terminal, so even though you had these two stations, none of them were accommodating 18-car trains. They were mostly 6 or 8-car trains, so there was a need for that. And there were capacity issues at King's Cross Station. So strategically very important. As you can see, it really was the main link from London through to Paris, but also Brussels and Germany. This is the rail infrastructure at King's Cross and St Pancras. I mean, so many lines: West Coast Main Line, East Coast Main Line, Thames Link, and a host and 6 tube lines underneath all of that. So that was sort of the starting point. Dwell on this, but if you look at the bottom line, you can see the sort of magnitude of growth that we were having to prepare for. What we did was initially to understand actually pedestrian flows, so there was a lot of analysis to try and understand with all the services coming in the peak service. You're talking about sort of 23,000 in the peak hour movements just in the center of this sort of hub. So what's being delivered now, so some of it has been delivered and some of it's still being built. So the Eurostar terminal is there now, the international terminal, and the high-speed rail, which also has a high-speed rail link to the Olympics, was an important part of our bid for the Olympics. You can get from King's Cross to the Olympic site in 6 minutes. Our Olympics is going to be the first Olympics that you can't drive to. Only competitors will be allowed to drive. So that will be the key link. Lots more, 3 new underground ticket halls for the underground, a brand new concourse for King's Cross Station itself, and interchange. Getting that sort of seamless interchange was massively important to us. And then the quality of the public realm, so that you should come out of the station, know where you are, feel very comfortable, and actually enjoy it, so that it would be a pleasant place to be. And that just gives you an idea of the complexity of all the stakeholder management sort of meetings, 20 people at least, always. So quite complex getting everybody to agree, because you had Transport for London, we were responsible for some of it, but then you had National Rail, Network Rail, were responsible for the rail stuff. There's a private company delivering the Channel Tunnel rail link. Well, it goes on, and then there was a developer that was going to develop all the land. So that gives you just an idea of the underground links that had to be created to hook everything together. So the bigger blob in the middle was the sort of central concourse, and then there were links through to all the different parts of the station. But what this doesn't show, I couldn't find a more up-to-date, but we've got under this whole area here is where the new concourse is going to be, which you'll see in a minute. And so there's another ticket hall for London Underground under there. So it's quite a complex arrangement of things going on underneath the station. So that's the new entrance to the international terminal. That's a picture, but it is open now and working. This is the new concourse. So at the moment, the station has a hideous sort of canopy over here that's made of wood, and it was granted a 5-year temporary planning permission about 35 years ago. It's appalling, and it doesn't really serve the purpose. It's very confusing. So that's all going to be removed and replaced with all of this, which sits on top of the underground ticket hall underneath. That's being designed by John McCaslin. Well, it's being built now, it's being designed. This is what the new terminus looks like, and the interesting thing that is St. Pancras Station, a very old station. It was hideous. It had suffered bomb damage during the war, so like all the glass on the roof had just been covered over with kind of, waterproof paper pretty much. It was hideous, and this was completely decked over, this is a Norman Foster project. He basically cut holes so you had a sort of public access concourse at the lower level, but that you could see the light. The light would filter right down to the bottom. It is a stunning place now. It's been incredibly successful. Lots of costs. This is being videoed, so you can look at that at your leisure. Very, very expensive project. And on the back of all that is a development project. So this is the development proposal, which I dealt with the planning permission about 6 years ago, and it's beginning to be built out. But you can see very, very large development. That was the goodie bag that the London Continental Railways, who built the Channel Tunnel rail link, the agreement with the government was once they'd built it and put it in and it was operational, they would get the land to develop. So it's up to them how much they generate in terms of income from the development. So obviously they've got their vested interest to make this really work. There's lots of heritage buildings on the site, including probably the first multimodal interchange ever built, which is the sort of brick building that you see at the center, which basically was on about 5 levels. So you had canal, you had rail, you had road. Back in the 1800s, built in about 1850s. Now the University of the Arts is an amalgamation of 3 of London's biggest art schools, all the ones you've ever heard of, all amalgamated into one in a new home. the developers of the land made significant contributions towards the transport, but I mean, it's a drop in the ocean compared to the cost of the package. Waterloo, very different. You've got a railway station kind of hemmed in here, very tight. You've got lots of residential on this side. You've got all the major London cultural facilities along the river here. And the problem is that, you know, this is a huge block to Severance in the area. So people who live behind it can't get through to enjoy the cultural facilities and the parks and stuff in the river. So one of the issues has always been, how do you make that station more permeable? So that's what it looks like sort of from the outside, sort of looking in towards the station. It is UK's most busy station, so it's incredibly busy. And this, very quickly, I won't dwell on it, but this is the kind of analysis that we typically go through, looking at all the problems with the station, the fact that it's congested, that there are conflicts between different modes, that pedestrians can't get anywhere, and all the rest. So the analysis is kind of first looking at what the real numbers are, understanding the numbers, then looking at all the conflicts and understanding, you know, do those journeys actually, are they possible to make without colliding with others? And then looking at them in separate modes as well. So looking at cycles and walking and trying to sort of separate them out. This is just looking at the peak congestion. So red is highly congested inside the station, and blue is okay. So you can see that, you know, there are huge conflicts for pedestrians, people navigating the station. It gives you an idea of the structure. I think the next one is even better. The complexity. It is a platform lifted up in the air on 2 stories of railway arches. I don't know how many millions of bricks are in there, but it's all brick, built in the 1800s, and it's a myriad of little kind of cubby holes and passages underneath. It's mostly just used as storage at the moment. Looking at the top, I mean, the crazy thing that we did, because we hadn't delivered the Channel Tunnel rail link before we started King's Cross and thinking about that, the Channel Tunnel rail used to come into here, and this was the international terminal. So this kind of piece here was added onto the station in the 90s to bring the Eurostar trains in, not high speed admittedly, but slow speed, and through South London and terminating here. When they built the Channel Tunnel rail link and they looked and planned and designed it, they said it was absolutely cuckoo to bring it in South London. It needed to come into North London. It was more cost effective and everything else. It comes into King's Cross now. So this has been fallow. It's the new international terminal opened in 2007, and we've been trying to figure out what do we do with this station. Network Rail, the net rail operator for National Rail, has got a mandate from the government to lengthen the platforms to 10-car operation by, I think, the next couple of years, and eventually to 12-car operation. Most of the trains coming in at the moment are 6 or 8 car. So there's a problem, because you can see those platforms there only take 8 car, and they can't be extended further back because the lines are getting closer and closer, so there's no room for the tracks, so that, or the platforms rather, so that's the problem. So that's, if you strip the roof off, you can see a bit better. You can see the very long, the Eurostar trains were 18 cars, so they were very long, came right up to the front, and they just could be accommodated. But, you know, so the obvious thing now that those platforms not being used is you're going to put the longer 12-car trains obviously into it, while you also fix and modify the other platforms. So thinking about that. And then below, thinking about how at the moment you can come down off the platforms, you can come down into one of these horrible corridors in the brick vaults, and you can sort of vaguely make your way to the underground, but it's kind of difficult, and that's kind of what it looks like. So you can imagine when that's congested in the peak hour, it's absolutely horrific. The key thing is to try and sort of see, well, could we actually separate out journeys and movements and eventually get to sort of a passage that went right the way through the station. So that's been the sort of overall objective. So at the moment, they're coming through at that higher level, and then they drop down at the moment. Well, the idea is to bring all the tube passengers through at the higher level and create the lower level for public access, so unpaid access. You can just get through the station. On the side of the station, we've also got an elevated taxi and bus road, it ramps up to, because the station is up in the air, 2 stories up in the air, they ramp up and you can drop off, but that in itself has problems. So the idea is to drop that down, create a new bus station at the lower level, so you'd come out the side of the station and you'd have interchange with all bus routes on there and taxis, and so that would all be gotten out of the front area, which at the moment the taxi ramp sort of ramps up here and then comes along here, and you can come out of the station at the moment and pick up some of the bus routes and taxis up here. But in the future scheme, this is at the lower level, you could either walk all the way through, and there's a market just behind those white houses, there's a street market, so that would be more accessible. Everything ideally will be much easier to navigate. This is the disgraceful main entrance to the station at the moment. You see people vaulting those fences. I mean, it's very complicated. You never seem to be on the right side of the fence. So this is the proposal through development. It will be completely opened up, new development that's going to go ahead, and then you have a sort of shared space approach. So you will still, in the initial, when the scheme is delivered initially, it could be in 4 or 5 years' time, buses and taxis potentially will still be running over it. But if the further station improvements come along, then all of that could move over to the other side, to that sort of bus and taxi interchange on the other side, in which case then the shared space will pretty much just be cycles and pedestrians, which will be obviously much better. Eurostar platforms, which at the moment run all the way up to the front, so where that dotted red line is, effectively the platforms will be pushed back, cut back. We don't need 18-car platforms, so they'll go back to 12, and you'll get a nice, you create a hole there, get the light in. It's a very interesting, beautiful structure, by the way, built by Grimshaw. Very interesting structurally and very attractive. So we want to retain it and be able to see it. And most of the time you can't see it. So this will actually allow you'll have a public space in the middle there, and you'll see the structure. And you'll have the link through to the trains, and you'll also have link at the lower level all the way through, and then all the purple will be future retail. So you'll either come off the train and be able to use the retail, or you just, as the public living around there or visitors, will also be able to use public access retail throughout. That's the proposal for the development at the moment. Still hasn't got planning permission. UNESCO are objecting violently because you can see it when you're standing next to the Houses of Parliament. So it may not look like that at the end of the day, but that's as far as they've got on that one. So this is a fly-through that Hopkins architects have done to sort of show how it might work. So it's basically everything I've just told you, but this is how, if you were running at high speed, it would feel. So come into this sort of new retail area, and you'll be able to take escalators up to the train levels. Approach towards where you'd want to go to the tube. You know what the tube is, I take it, the underground. This is coming out a bit under the new development. So part of the new development, there's a long, about 1960s or 70s slab block which completely cuts the station off from the London Eye and the rest of the sort of facilities on the South Bank. So by breaking the new building into 2, you create another opening, so that as you come out of the station you immediately see the London Eye, the iconic London Eye, and kind of know where you're going to be going. There you can see the structure of the Grimshaw roof, which these curved kind of trusses, which are very beautiful. And you get sort of solid and glass, so you get this sort of very nice light quality, which now you'll be able to see and have the benefit of. And then you go up to the higher level, which is the concourse level, so the departure level for the trains. So now you're up on the top concourse level. So this is where you walk along, you get your tickets and orient yourself when your train's leaving and then get onto the train. Okay, so Battersea Nine Elms. This is an area really at the heart of central London. You can probably just about make out the Houses of Parliament are sort of about there somewhere. Victoria Station is just here. And this Battersea Power Station was decommissioned in the 1980s and has stood empty ever since. The first developer pulled the roof off, so sadly it's really deteriorating, and there's now the third developer on the site trying to make this work. And the problem why they couldn't make it work was there is no transport. There are a few buses running over here, and there's a sort of railway station roughly down here somewhere, but quite a walk because you have to come out and on the road and come all the way around. Very disconnected. There's a few buses running along here, but it wasn't seen for the vision and the high density development that was being proposed. It just wasn't working without the transport, so we had to sort of look at how could we actually make the transport work better. And the obvious solution was, well, everybody said it's not on the tube, so that's the biggest problem. So there was a study to look at extending one of the tube lines and extend it right through into the site. So this was a major study that was undertaken by TFL. And basically, you've got the black line on there is the northern line, which goes further south. And so the idea is to take the blue line and peel off and go all the way to Battersea Power Station. You get 2 or 3 stops, and then it would go back. In the long term, it would probably be extended even further. But the development of this sort of regeneration area is only focusing on going to Battersea at the moment. I don't know if you use PTALs. Does anybody know what PTALs are? This is a measure of transport accessibility that we use in England. It's called public transport, PTAL, public transport accessibility level. And red is good and pale blue is terrible. So the site, and it has all sorts of criteria about how far away you are, how easy it is to get there, and so on. So you can see that the top of the site has good accessibility, but most of the site has very, very poor accessibility. And that's about the accessibility level across the site today. And you can just see the white line over there, which is actually would be underground, the tube line underground. Now, if you extend it just to Nine Elms, which was initially was just a short little hop, everybody thought that'll do it. It doesn't make any difference to the PTAL level. So you say you spend millions and millions of pounds. Why would you do that if you don't actually improve the PTAL? But when you improve it or take it all the way through to Battersea, the PTAL, the entire site becomes red, which is very good. So there was a very good justification for extending the tube line. So the overall cost of the project is estimated at about £700 million. What we've looked at is how much the developers could contribute towards that cost. So there's a requirement in British legislation that developers actually do pay towards mitigate their impact. So they have to pay anyway. So it was basically looking at how much can the development afford. So we did analysis, and the answer is roughly 500 million. We couldn't get it up to 700 million. We tried higher density, everything, but couldn't get it up to 700. So there was this 200 million. So the proposal is to use a sort of TIF instrument, which we borrowed from here from the States, Transport Incremental Funding. But the problem is that the British legislation or English legislation doesn't allow us to use that mechanism at the moment. So they have to pass an act of parliament. The government's very supportive, and they're saying this would be a good pilot for TIF. The idea being that you get the 200 million loan from the government, and then the business tax that are yielded over 20 or 30 years would go immediately straight back to the government, so hypothecated to pay back that loan. So it looks like it could happen. And this is the sort of master plan at the moment for the area. So reorganizing the streets, overcoming severance. There's lots of severance because of railway lines and other things. To create lots of open space and park. Create a very attractive place. At the moment, you can't get through it. So the idea is that you get these penetrations you can see here, where you'd actually create passages underneath and roads underneath, so this part is linked with this part. and then that building is the new American embassy. So that's already, I think, under construction. They're, I think, doing the groundworks at the moment. Old Oak Common is an interesting area. It's further west. It's not so central as Battersea by any means, but has a unique opportunity at the moment because we're building Crossrail, which is high-speed rail link that links with the underground. This is about halfway through its construction, due to open in 2016. But now we're also talking about a second high-speed rail link up to Birmingham from London. So the first high-speed one was the one I talked about earlier that comes into King's Cross. This would go via Old Oak Common and then go up to Birmingham. So you could get up to Birmingham in about under an hour, as opposed to sort of 2 hours and a bit at the moment. And so the feeling is that you should place the new high-speed rail line to intersect with Crossrail, because this is a high-capacity, high-speed tube line, effectively getting you into central London, and that you should create a hub here, so create a new hub. The project is basically sort of take advantage of the strategic rail opportunities, but there are also many highways that sort of link at this point, or could be linked if they were linked together, and opportunity for sort of light transit. So strategically, it's very well placed to connect up an enormous number of communities that at the moment are completely severed and can only really connect by car, and car congestion is absolutely rife in the area, so you really can't get anywhere. You know, it's very, very slow in the morning peak, and we're discovering more and more as we model it that actually by 2031 it's going to be gridlock all the time, so we can't rely on highways in the future. So this is just sort of analysing the strategic sort of aspects of the site and its relationship to central London, its strategic relationship in terms of both air and other rail services, and the local London services. So it has the potential for being unbelievably well connected if you put in the links that are needed to make that happen. Park Royal at the moment is just a massive industrial park, but access only by truck. It's underperforming. For years we've been trying to think how to sort that out. Old Oak Common, again, similarly, is a kind of enclosed almost wasteland of light industrial and not very high yield uses. Really don't contribute to the economy. But you can, by sort of dividing this zone up into sort of different zones, can actually link them all together with this high-speed hub in the center, so that you adjust, you know, the highway network, so you get that to work, and then you get the rail to work and interconnect with everything, and then the light transit as well, so that ultimately it will become a very highly connected place, the potential for a lot of homes. So there's a canal that runs through as well, so exploiting that, getting the green links, so that it becomes an attractive place. And so at the moment we're looking at something like 10,000 new homes and 40,000 jobs, but very importantly, a massive contribution to the UK economy. And this is just developing the plan a little bit more. I mean, it's just at a very early master plan stage, but you can see the potential for getting massive housing in there. And this was something like what the railway station, you'd have the high-speed rail and Crossrail and light transit all interconnected at the hub. You'd be getting sort of a multi-layered kind of sandwich of different functions happening with a lot of dense housing on top. There we go. So then this next one, London Bridge Station. Interesting. It's there's Europe's tallest building, the Shard, is being built there. It's nearly finished, and London Bridge House as well. So high density developments already happening around the station. Huge capacity issues at the station. A problem that the station needs to be somewhat reconfigured, because it was originally a terminus, then they modified it to make trains go through. It's on the south of the river, so they had some tracks that went through to the north of the river, but not functioning very well. It's been designated as an opportunity area, so despite the fact that we've had all this growth already, we are expecting more, so there was a need to upgrade the rail services. This is Grimshaw again. Grimshaw did the roof at Waterloo, and again it's sort of reconfiguring the station, so this is kind of how the station looks at the moment. That's taking you down to kind of peeling everything off. So get down to the ground level. And this station suffered from a very similar problem as Waterloo in that it's massive severance. You can see again, I can't remember, I think there's probably about 12 tracks. It's not as wide as Waterloo, but nonetheless, enormous severance. There are two little tunnels that go underneath, which are jammed full of trucks and vehicles, so it's a very unpleasant place to walk. So the idea is to create permeability through the station, all the way through, so you'll be able to walk unpaid, so without a ticket through from either side. So this is showing how you sort of preserving the historic fabric. So it's a very fine brick structure, so part of that will be preserved in the new scheme. This is a little bit slow, I'm sorry, but so then once they've created the passage, then they put in new structure, escalators up to all the platforms. Because at the moment I think most of the platforms are only accessed by stairs, so quite difficult to get up there anyway. And then finally you get new canopies sort of on top, so you can see the extra track going around the outside, and then the roof going on, and then a sort of approach to the roof, which not everybody's very happy with, because not the entire platform is covered, and so there's a fair bit of discussion going on at the moment as to whether it's acceptable to not cover the entire length of the platform. But this is what it would feel like once it's finished. Quite a grand space. Those are the ticket barriers you're coming into the paid side of the station now. And you'd have both lifts and escalators up to every platform. So part of the problem is to get the disabled access up to the stations. You've had to widen the platform. Some of the platforms are quite narrow, so you couldn't pop a elevator up through the platform. So they had to widen them, which means that the stations had to bulge a little bit. So the big new structure obviously holding up the rail tracks above, but then you're cutting sort of holes so daylight comes down to this lower level, which at the moment is completely cut off. And that's been something we've been trying very hard to do, I think, in all our station modernizations, is to get daylight down to the lower levels so that you're not sort of wandering around in darkness and very low ceiling, unpleasant places. So some things we've been looking at is obviously all these projects, running into billions, and we don't have the money. Simple as that. How can we deliver this through development? So what we've been developing lately over the last 2-3 years are development infrastructure planning studies. So once we do a master plan for an opportunity area, we know the quantum of growth that can be supported. We've done the transport analysis that says that a certain quantum of development can be supported. And we identify what all infrastructure is necessary to support the development. Then we do these infrastructure diffs, as we call them, studies which really look at we cost all the infrastructure that we've identified. At the beginning, we don't know what necessarily all those costs are. So we work out the total cost of all infrastructure that's needed. Then we look at the other side of the equation, which is the total yield that we can get from the quantum of development, and identify whether there's going to be a funding gap, or whether, in fact, the development can fund everything. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. We need to know what the funding gap is so that we can go to central government or to other sources to actually plug that funding gap so that it can be developed. Because the principle is, our studies say, that you cannot have the development without the transport mitigation. They have to come together. We don't allow development to happen without that transport mitigation. So we have to work out a way that it can be delivered, moving more to TIFs, as I said. But there are also other grants, particularly housing grant. Now, housing grants, a big part of these developments is that there's a requirement to deliver a high proportion of affordable housing. Under Ken Livingstone, it was 50%. And in the current climate, we've dropped it to 25%, though some local authorities are still insisting on about 40%. Well, obviously, if you've got that proportion of affordable housing in the mix of what the developer's producing, their profit margins are severely cut. So is it possible to get housing grant? In the past, there were very good housing grants from government, from sort of non-governmental organizations that would actually fund all affordable housing delivery, and that they would come into the sort of funding mix of the whole development. So there's going to be a lot of lobbying to ensure that the government actually raises the level of affordable housing grant that is delivered. At the moment, they're saying that a young graduate who comes out of school and starts his first job would not have any chance in their lifetime of buying a property in London. Housing is that expensive. So affordable housing is absolutely essential, and key workers can't live in London. So police and firemen very often live outside of London where housing is cheaper, but obviously having very long commutes or having to come in by train or car, which is worse still in terms of us. So covered that. Planning obligations, that the planning obligations is a requirement under UK legislation that you have to mitigate your impact if you make a development. So, and it's known as Section 106. But I think the key is the transparency of the process. So, I mean, when you saw those diagrams of all the stakeholders, it is about having complete transparency over what's being tried to achieve, and all the stakeholders kind of working together to make it happen. And many developers are very sensitive about their profit margins. I mean, they all say we won't do it if we don't make 20% profit. Everybody agrees that that's reasonable, but we don't always believe that they're only making 20%. So we have a system whereby a third party can be appointed to look at the figures and scrutinize the whole economic model, and then advise the mayor and say either, no, you could get a lot more out of this development, or no, you can't. In fact, it's dodgy as it is. So that I think is a very important process in terms of everybody being on the same page and agreeing, you know, that this development might be affordable and happen. Okay, any questions?
Great. Thank you, Camilla.